Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to today's Partner Web Conference. This is new FY20 Partner Program, Security Workshop and Threat Check. My name is Janice and I'm going to be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this web conference through Teams live events and the audio can be heard through your PC speakers. Today's web conference is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. If you do not consent to be a part of a recorded session, we ask that you please disconnect now. The web conference recording will be available within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, you can turn to the Q&A panel located on the right-hand side of your screen. We do have presenters standing by to answer your questions throughout the session. Now, a little bit more about this presentation. This web conference has been brought to you in partnership across the Office 365, Windows, and EMS teams to cover topics in Microsoft 365 products and solutions. The presentation will be approximately 45 to 50 minutes in length, and then we will be reserving a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. We'd like to thank you in advance for your patience while our presenters work through those. If you find that your question was not answered or would like more follow-up, you can also head over to the Security Partners Yammer group and post your question there. We'll be sharing that Yammer link in the Q&A panel momentarily. Now, on to the presentation. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Partner Marketing Manager Katja Cole. Joining Katja is Product Marketing Manager Natalia Batar. Then we have Architect from the Center of Excellence, Marius Ostrowski. And then supporting us on Q&A today is Architect from the Center of Excellence, Cedric Depap. So without any further delay, Katja, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining and welcome to the security workshop discussion that we have today, which really is our key hero go-to-market motion for you as partners to drive the security workload. The agenda that we have for today is we're going to talk to you about the security workshop program in and in itself, the different modules that we have prepared and provided to you. But really the bulk of today's time we want to spend in a deep dive with what we call the threat check component, where we want to go into the technical details on how to apply it, what to do with the results, and how you can build the recommendations out of that. And obviously we have enough time for Q&A to address any additional topics that you want to talk. So let's start with the context of all the various go-to-market programs that we are offering you to drive the security workload. The things that most of you are more familiar with typically is where we have been leveraging partners in the past. What you see here on this slide is our E5 security upsell checklist, which looks very familiar both for partners as well as for our enterprise sellers in itself. And typically where partners have been playing a big role is when it comes into the technical case here. So in the 60% stage, where many of you have been supporting us with driving assessments and POCs, or then when it comes into the actual deployment of these products, where in most of the cases, I know many of you have been leveraging our eSIF offerings and the tools and kits that we have been providing with you. In addition to that, we have done a revamp of our incentive structure here to really help you assist when it comes into the deployment and the usage of our products as well. What we've noticed, though, from pilots and best practices from last year is that we're missing a critical component. And this might come to no surprise to you as partners, is we're lacking to include you way earlier in the sales conversation. And this is how the idea of the security workshop has been born. Really to get you looped in an early engagement where the goal is to drive customer intent for the security workloads that we have. And what it is essentially it is a combination of the security component, a security workshop in itself, including some threat check components that we will walk you later through. What it is specifically is it is a culmination of best practices and learnings that we have across the product, both from field as well as customers, what resonated well. We package that together for you in one kit that is downloadable. That offers you a standardized methodology to run through the workshop. It is also one out of 3 offerings that we have under the M365 umbrella, with really the key goal of driving customer intent. And because it is a standardized offering that we have across these 3 workloads, it's also the same funding principles, nomination process, and payouts that allows you a smoother partner experience. The difference, though, that comes with the security workshop is we have this component of threat check that we will walk you through later today in this discussion. So essentially, the security workshop is designed as a 3-day customer-facing engagement with 1 workshop day that we expect to have in a physical presence at the customer's premises, where the key goals are to provide the end-to-end story, showcase the technology that we have at hand with our security products, and really drive the understanding of the customer objectives and goals that they have and map that to the solutions that Microsoft provides from a security standpoint. On top of that, though, and this is where we believe is the critical component of it, is the threat check piece, which in and in itself is a threat check license that we are providing you in this conversation that you can apply to a customer's tenant to gather real-time insights into the risks the customer currently is at. And typically what happens at that part of the conversation is many questions around how that relates to the regular E5 trial that we have. And we're going to go further into the details later in the presentation. The key important thing, though, is this threat check license also works when a customer has already applied the E5 trial license in and in itself. And what that means is essentially we're giving you that threat check license to unlock the E5 security capabilities when you add that to the very specific customer tenant. And what that allows you is to simply turn on the capabilities, gather logs and insights into the current threats that a customer might have, and you can leverage that as in a stronger conversation, than much more powerful conversation that you can have with the customer. So that's the different components of the workshop. What we provide you on top of that is a culmination of all the various materials that you have. Some of you might be familiar with some of the parts of it, which essentially is we're leveraging the CISO workshop that some of you have executed as well, that has been created by our cyber security group last year. We have these 5 components here culminated together, and we're going to walk through each one of them today. One that I want to specifically highlight, though, is that threat check component here, where we have also created a 30-page delivery guide that really walks through to all the specifics, how to apply the license, and what to do with the insights and the recommendations that you can build around that. And beyond that, we also have funding available for you here. Before you nominate your customers, please make sure that you hit the partner requirements here. So you need to be either fast track ready or co-sell ready to get funding. And then we do have 2 funding options for you. One is the $2,000 payment that you can request for a workshop only. But we highly recommend you to leverage the threat check component on top of that. And what we actually see right now, most of you are requesting that $5,000 funding for that, because we feel it's a much more impactful conversation that you can have with the customer, and obviously additional funding that you can leverage for that. Whom we target with that? Typically, we target current existing Office or M365 customers that have over 1,000 Exchange Online qualified entitlements. And typically, they don't have enough threat defense systems up. And so this is really where we can then apply the security solutions from Microsoft. When you want to leverage the threat check component, generally, we recommend to have a higher Exchange Online usage for that, so that you get enough threat signals that you can leverage for the workshop. But when it comes into requesting funding, we require at a minimum a 25% usage to qualify for the funding. This is a program that is on a first come, first served base. So let me walk you through the workflow that allows you to make sure that you get the right funding for your top opportunities secured. So the way it works is, obviously, you first need to identify your top security customer projects and define your opportunity pipeline. For those of you that are part of the Fast Track program, you do have a reporting around the requirements that are asked for the security workshop in your FTOP Power BI reporting, and so you can leverage that as well to build your top opportunity pipeline. The second step is you do need to nominate your target accounts on the website, where we'll provide you the link here in the chat in a second. You do need to nominate your customers to check if they are finally eligible for funding, but also to make sure that funding is allocated to you. Once we have confirmed that your customer is eligible, you have then 30 days to schedule the introduction call with your customer and have the customer confirm that they are interested and want to proceed with the workshop. Once we have this information from your customer that they're willing to do the workshop with you as a partner, you then have 90 days to execute the workshop. And as soon as after that, you are providing us with the proof of execution materials that you can also find in the workshop kit, we are then able to release the funding for that. Again, this is a program that comes on a first come, first serve base when it comes into funding, but the material itself is there for all of your customer conversations. And now talking about the material, I'll hand over to Natalia, who is walking you through 4 of the 5 modules before we then go deeper into the threat check component.
Thank you, Katja. Hello, everyone. I'm Natalia. I work in the security team. And let me start talking about the first module. So thinking about the workshop day, the first thing that we need to deliver is, of course, the Microsoft Security Overview. So here is when we land our security value prop that goes through technology that we're going to talk about information protection, threat protection, identity, security management, through operations and partnerships that gives us our differentiation. So this is the Microsoft Secure 100 deck that we're going to provide you with a super comprehensive talk track so you can start the day, kick off the day really delivering the best pitch. Also, we'll be providing a sample pitch recording so you can watch and train your pitch. After that, it's time to do the discovery session. What is the discovery session? This is leveraging the best practice from our cybersecurity group, from the CISO workshop. It's really to learn about our customer. So think the importance of really understanding their core priorities, not only security priorities, but IT priorities, the all-up influence that can impact their decision making. So here, what we provide today is a spreadsheet that you can leverage to really go through this conversation and get the best insights you could have to also not only leverage during the day, but to create a plan with your customer. But what is super cool is that we'll be launching September 12th, a new online tool that I'll be showing to you in just 1 minute. But I want to highlight here the 3 core areas that is super important during this discovery session. The first one is all about the IT objectives. What are our customers' IT objectives in terms of strategic, infrastructure, what they have in mind that could impact the journey to the cloud or the journey to a better security posture. The influence are all about the factors that can help or that can block some of these objectives or priorities. And of course, we're going to bring the top security priorities you should talk to your customer about. What is super cool here is that we are going to help you going through all the important topics that really brings Microsoft as a security vendor, as this end-to-end security vendor. And important thing here, it's all about listening and challenging also the customer. We know, and you guys know more than us, that customers love to talk about themselves. So it's the time to really make them talk, ask the right question, take notes, and really leverage the insights that we're going to take from the session. It's super critical that you really take the best insights and use during the day. I'm going to show you super quick how this tool looks like. So this tool will be available in the neotransform.com Microsoft website, and will be available again September 12th. So the first thing is really about the organization profile, right? What is the size? How they describe their complexity? What is their security risk tolerance? All these details can help you understanding better your customer to leverage exactly the best solution for them. A little bit more about technology, how they are running in the cloud, if they have any specific third-party security service. And then it goes to the IT objectives that I was just talking about. The tool is super easy to use, so we're gonna bring all the definitions you need to help you going through the conversation. And again, the idea here is to add up to 10 relevant objectives that your customer may have. We are bringing some of the potential objectives as BIOD, or create a cybersecurity division, or data governance initiative. So different types of IT objectives, but you can also type new objectives if they are not listed here. And you're gonna make sure you address in which category it lands. Once you learn the IT objectives, it's time to go to the influence conversation. And as I mentioned, it can be different things here. It can come from a process perspective, regulation, or even the customer culture. Here we bring some of examples as regulation, CEO sponsorship, or any cybersecurity issue that they just had could influence in their ability to prioritize any initiative. Also, it's great that you can, here in this space, flag if this can be something that could leverage and accelerate a security initiative or block. Once you understand better their IT objectives and what can influence their decision making, you go a little bit deeper on the security priorities. This is a mock-up, so this is not the final list, but brings an idea on what are the topics that we're going to cover here, from data discovery and auto-classification to threat hunting, going through endpoint security. So it's really about understanding all the different layers that we can have when we talk about security. And you always talk about their perception, right? So here is not a super deep analysis on their environment. Here is the conversation. Here's what is top of mind for them. So it's super easy to use from 1 to 5. And then also in terms of maturity, so how mature they feel and also how urgent is that topic for them. And you're gonna bring the IT objectives and the influence that you already talked and map to that. The cool thing here is that customers love this type of report and they will leverage this documentation with other stakeholders inside their companies. So once we finalize that and go through the other modules that we're going to talk about, at the end of the day, you're going to have this documentation to share with your customer and they will find super value on that. Going back to our next module is the CIE. So most of you are already aware of the CIE, are delivering the CIE. The great news is now that we are building new scenarios. So what you have today are still the fiscal year 19 scenarios that you already know. What will be launching soon, the first one is the end user day in a life experience. It's all about how we bring together productivity and security to our end users. Then we are building a new one that is really based on the SecOps experience, all the attacks and how we can protect, defend, and respond quickly to this type of scenarios. The first one will be available also next month. The SecOps one will be available in October. And then one that we just started developing, but I want to bring to your attention, is the Security Operations Center of the future. So it's really how we bring Sentinel and other technologies to bring the next SecOps experience that we want to have. With that, that's it. I will be back later, but Mariusz, can you please talk about the threat check?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Natalia.
Thank you.
So I will basically walk you through the threat check module of Security Workshop. This is one of the 5 modules, as Katja had previously indicated, one of the biggest modules actually. First, let me describe objectives that are behind that module. So what we want to achieve by running the threat check module in this Security Workshop engagement with the customer is basically to gain visibility into threats that may be targeted at the customer's cloud environment, Microsoft 365 cloud environment, across identity plane, data plane, as well as email plane. We basically want to better help the customer better understand what are the potential vectors of attack against their environment. And obviously also we want to help them to understand how they can better mitigate these threats that they may not have been aware of even. The approach in a threat check is to leverage three components, three elements of Microsoft 365 security, namely Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, Microsoft Cloud Application Security, as well as Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. And leveraging these tools, as we call them, in this engagement, to discover threats towards customers' cloud environment. The important piece that I would like to highlight here during on that slide is basically that the way how we want to set up these services is without any impact upon the customer's environment. We give you a guidance, precise guidance how to set them up, so there is no impact upon users or their devices. And then once we have set up those tools, we basically will be able to recommend based on what they caught. The outcome towards the end of the threat check part of the security workshop should be the following. So first, you should provide to the customer what we call the threat check results report. This is basically a list of threats that were found or noted during the period of that engagement, and with a little bit of interpretation around that. And then the second piece, second outcome or second deliverable would be the mapping between threats that were found and the Microsoft 365 security products and their features. The intention here is basically to give the customer understanding or first glance into understanding what they could do if they had those tools up and running. Not necessarily only those ones that these ones that would be used during the threat check. The recommendations can go beyond that, but we'll get there. Now, the other thing that I would also like to highlight is there will be certain elements that you don't want to go into when delivering a threat check. You really don't want to do really that deep analysis or investigation of threats, right? You wouldn't simply have time for that. I'll show you a timeline, recommended timeline, and a recommended amount of effort that you should be putting into that. You simply would probably not have enough time to do such a deep dives. Instead, we prefer something lighter, but again, I'll explain in a moment when I'll be talking about how to analyze threats. We definitely don't want you to do any technical designs during the engagement, and then we definitely also don't include the review of threats, security, incidents, or anything like that to on-premises infrastructure. It's a cloud focused engagement. All right, talking about the timeline, how we deliver threat check, and not just threat check, the whole security workshop. Please note two colors on this slide. There is like a dark blue color and light blue color. So these modules that are colored light blue that were described by Natalia just prior to me stepping into the call, they are on the right side of the slide. They are right there, and basically they are the ones that are delivered towards the end. You start with a threat check, really, right? You start with something that we call the pre-engagement call, just basic discussion with the customer, explaining how to deliver, how the whole engagement will be delivered. You agree when you start, which people should attend, what resources you would need from the customer, things like that. The typical scoping of the call, if you wish, scoping of the engagement, if you wish. Then you start delivering the threat check module. Really, we recommend doing that on site, but the engagement is also doable or deliverable in a remote fashion. So you start with a kickoff with all the stakeholders in the room, ideally, all the security architects or whoever needs to be in the room with from the customer, and basically you try to discuss and explain to that broader audience goals, scope, and again which would be used. These are elements from Microsoft security products and services, and then basically make sure that everybody is okay with the expectations and how the next steps will be carried on. And now we'll be discussing next steps. I will just go really quickly through them in a timeline, and then I'll just also show them to you in next couple of minutes. So then you'll move into what we call a technical setup, which is essentially setting up the environment in a customer's production tenant to absorb or watch for those threats. There are two components in that: setting up the threatcheck license and the configuration of those tools. From the perspective of the setup, I'll be describing that in a moment. I just want to move on a little bit and just say a few words about that one. After 2 weeks, you will come back to the customer, roughly 2 weeks. We recommend roughly 2 weeks, could be like 3 weeks, could be slightly less, but typically you should not come earlier than 2 weeks, because you really need to have enough time for the threats to kind of accumulate. You really want to have the chance to catch something that's valuable, and during that period of waiting. And then you basically will be reviewing these threats with the customer and providing them with your analysis and your recommendations. So let's step into these area again, starting with the threatcheck license and how we set it up. The threatcheck license is basically something that is very similar to Microsoft 365 Security E5 trial license. It was built based on that license. It will work even if the customer already had activated either Microsoft 365 E5 trial, or if the customer had previously tried Microsoft 365 E5 security trial. You still will be able to apply the threatcheck license to the customer tenant. The important piece also to mention is at this step is that if the customer has a production Microsoft 365 license deployed in a tenant, or Microsoft 365 E5 security license, then there is no need to deploy the threatcheck license. Still, we expect that in many cases you would need to do that threatcheck license. Another important piece to emphasize is that there will be these licenses will be issued only for the production, if you wish, engagements, meaning like they should only be used in a security workshop with a threatcheck. You should not use them for any like a demos, trainings, things like that. Please leverage our demonstration platform, Demos Microsoft.com, or what was formerly known as Demos Microsoft.com, and for these purposes. The threatcheck license will allow you to use the tools that we will be using the threatcheck for up to 60 days. I said previously that there is expectation that the whole engagement will be roughly 2-3 weeks with that gap in the middle. So you should have enough buffer to accommodate any additional requirements or change management or things like that. The license has 15 users, but in fact that's not really relevant because we would not be assigning any users to that license. I also want to emphasize that everything that I'm saying is also covered in a delivery guide that comes as a part of the toolkit. One of the things that you also need for deployment of the license would be the sign-up link. And the sign-up link for the threatcheck license will be provided to you in an email that you'll get from us, from Microsoft, once the funding for the security workshop is confirmed. So in that email, with the confirmation, there will be also a little piece or part of the email which will say, for the deployment of the threatcheck link, please use that specific URL. Again, there is no need to assign licenses to users. It's the only thing that you would need to do is deploy the license in a customer tenant, in a customer production tenant, obviously. Then on a threatcheck tools. Well, let me just simply say that the initial configuration of those tools, Azure Active Directory, Office 365, and Microsoft Cloud Application Security should not take longer than 1 hour, maybe up to 2 hours if that's more complex situation with the customer. And once they are configured, you are good to go. Again, follow the delivery guide. Do not step away from the recommendations that are provided in the delivery guide, because that could potentially jeopardize the intention of being non-intrusive to the customer environment. And then you come, as I was saying, in 2 weeks, and basically you use these tools to discover what the tool caught during that period. So what I'm showing right now on the screen is basically one of our test tenants. And I would like to show you a couple of things that you might see in a customer environment that after you come back to the customer after 2 weeks. So the first tool that you would look at would be Azure Identity Protection. And you might see already on the screen that there must have been some threats to that environment over a period of last couple of days, because you see a couple of lines here. Let's focus on users which have been threatened. You can see a list of users with the dates and everything. I also want to say at this point that you don't necessarily have to look at that through the perspective or risk level or number of events that you might see here when looking at these events, these threats. You might want to also discuss a little bit with the customer which of the users that were potentially threatened are important for you. Like here in this example, I can see user Anna Victim, and it just happens that Anna Victim is a very important user in our organization. And even if there was just only one risk event associated with her, only one threat, you might want to pick that one and kind of like look at that together with the customer and say, and kind of use that as example of the threat later on during the discussions, explaining what you actually found, what you discovered. We recommend not necessarily discuss every single threat. Again, in a period of 2 or 3 weeks, you might get lots of these. Pick a couple of most significant ones. And significance is defined based on criteria, obviously, of the level of risk, but also on the criteria of who is being targeted, right? Threats towards CXOs or global admins would probably be more important than threats to average users. This kind of approach. Okay, so that's the first tool. Then the second tool that you would use would be Office 365 ATP. So you would go to the threat management, and then in Explorer tool, you'd see threats like a malware or threats like a phishing. As you can see here in this particular environment, we have already some threats noticed. There has been some phishing attempts against these users in this organization. And again, approach it from the standpoint, you might want to look at the most important users. You might want to look at the who is being threatened, but also you might want to also do slightly more investigation towards understanding who exactly, what exact mechanisms in Office 365 ATP have been used to protect those users. So here in dashboard, you will find a very useful report called Threat Protection Status Report. You just want to make sure that you select the proper period. Let's say last 2 weeks from now. Well, let's say 3 weeks just for simplicity, right? And then for last 3 weeks, I can see that there has been certain threats here, like some attempts for to plant a malware through the email, some phishing campaigns, as well as some other threats in that sense. You can also look slightly deeper, like what exact mechanism detected those threats, as well as who was threatened. Which users have been threatened via email plane with these threats. So, and again, approach should be like, let's look at that and let's analyze that through the perspective of which would be the threats that would be the most significant from the customer. And finally, Microsoft Cloud Application Security, place where you would go for threats towards identity and data. And you'd go to alerts, And you'll see again, there will probably be quite a lot of different alerts. I would not hide from you that many of them might be false positives. So pick up carefully, pick those threats that would be meaningful to the customer. Typically, the indication would be obviously the severity of the threats here. However, still I have all the threats at a medium level. And then pick them up based on who is being threatened. Like for example, right here, I have the user Anna, who is probably quite important user for me, and I can see there has been some certain activity from a darknet, from a Tor IP address, or you might see certain very significant alarms like atypical travel or sign-ins from different IP addresses during a short period of time. This kind of events should be the ones that you should be looking at very closely, as well as kind of like events towards data, like a malware detection. Right here, you can see that, for example, there has been some malware detected in certain files during the period of the engagement. So these are the things that you want to highlight to the customer, and basically you then take them and basically you put them together and pick the best ones for your threat check results report. And the threat check results report is essentially kind of like a short summary of the threats that you found, right? With obviously starting from general things that you found, right? With some key insights that you can share with the customer. Like here in this example, your key insights would be like, looks like there are quite a lot of users with compromised credentials, things like that, right? And then you would go into deeper and pick one or two threats that would be representative. Again, you wouldn't analyze and go into for a very deep investigation for every threat. You would just do a little bit of analysis on one or two, just to highlight that, you know, these tools that you've used caught certain threats that the customer might have not been aware of. Same with the advanced threats protection from Office 365, from general to more specific threats that you would pick as example for the customer. Same with the Microsoft Cloud Application Security. These are examples, obviously, right? I mean, how you define the report would definitely depend on what you see in a portal after you come back to that portal with the customer. And then based on that, you start to prepare recommendations for the customer. Now, the recommendation is one of the crucial pieces of the engagement, because that's something that you would use as a proof point later on during the final day of the security workshop, as a proof point that they should really think about securing the cloud environment. So you pick those most representative, those example threats that I mentioned before, right? You pick them and basically you say like, well, this is the threat that I found. This is about this, and you fill in these template which we provide in our toolkit, by the way. And I recommend that you pick a couple of threats really in each of those planes, right? Like in identity plane, in email plane, in a data plane. You might not have threats in each of those planes, right? Sometimes you might just have threats to identity, sometimes you might just have threats to email, but ideally try to get the threats from each of the planes and say like, this was found here, this was found on that date, that kind of like just pick the threat and I say, well, if only you could have used that feature from whatever tool, like Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, or maybe that would be Azure Active Directory Advanced Threat Protection, or maybe that would be Exchange Online Protection, or maybe that would be Microsoft Defender ATP. See, even tools that are or services that were not used during this engagement, and if you enable this particular feature or this particular functionality in that security service, then you would be much safer. And basically you pick it up and then you have something ready to share with the customer. And with that, I'll pass on back to Natalia and Katja.
Thank you. So thinking about all the experience that we talked today, and how you could better wrap up the day with really specific next steps to accelerate your sales cycle. So we talked about Microsoft Value Prop, we learned about the customer, we bring our threat check insights and findings, we deliver a hands-on experience through the CIE, and then in the end of the day, we need to sit with our customers and define what are our next steps, right? So in the tool that I just showed to you, we're gonna have this next steps space where you can actually be super specific on which activity will be the next one. So if they need a proof of concept, if they need a resource, or if they need a specific deep dive on a product or solution, training, up to you and the customer, then the time frame that it will happen, and where it's about what, right? Which initiative that you want to talk about in the next steps. Based on the conversation of the discovery session, we're going to bring already here what are the top initiatives that matters for your customer. So it will be much easier to actually prioritize from what they care most, and then have clear visibility on what you're going to do in the next 2 to 4 weeks and then 1 to 3 months. Also, the good thing of having a tool and having everything here, it's really because we're making it easier for you. So all the report from the discovery session, the threat check report that you will upload here, and the next steps, we're going to put together in an email so you can send directly from the tool or copy and paste in your email and make your edits. But it's really easy to wrap up the day and define next steps. So that's it from a tool. Now, Katja.
All right, thank you, Natalia. So this was the bulk of the presentation that we wanted to bring you through today. There are 4 calls of actions that we want to highlight here, which is really also the link collection where you can learn more. The first thing is we asked you to really get familiar with the program before you execute that with a customer. Again, the security workshop kit is here downloadable under one link, and that has all the components that we walked you through there today in one folder, including the delivery guide of the threat check component, the very specific other links that we have shared today, and much more content to really get you familiar and prep you to have these conversations with the customers. The next piece obviously is also important, is to identify your top customer prospects here. Again, the key target are customers that already have Office 365 or Exchange Online today that don't have the right security posture that. Identify these customers and make sure that they qualify for the funding as well. The way you can do that is we are also providing you a comprehensive marketing kit that you can leverage to have that conversation with your customer. And once that is happening, you can please nominate them under the website that we have here under the AKA Security Workshop nomination. Nominate your customers here, make sure that you can secure funding for that. But that also allows us to work together with you, helping you to close these opportunities in a faster way together with our field sellers, which brings me to the 4th point. Really work together with your local Microsoft contacts on both readiness, but also on additional support. We consider you as partners here a crucial element on driving the security discussions with customers. And so please make sure to work closely with them, both on readiness, but also on additional support to go through these opportunities jointly with Microsoft. And with that, we have another 15 minutes to go. Thank you for those that have listened to all of the webinar and all the various questions that you have brought up in the Q&A window. Because we have a little bit more time, what we can do is answer some more of your questions. And what we'll do is read through some of the published questions, the key ones that I think will be fundamental, and we will provide now further guidance with actually talking through them. Thank you everyone for attending this call here. And if there are any questions, please feel free to reach out to us on the Yammer group as well. We would love to stay in touch with you and really make sure that this will be a key hero motion for you and us driving the security workloads. Thanks everyone. So as we have finished with the presentation, I think there are a couple of key questions. Mariusz, why don't we go ahead and I'll read them through to you, and if you want to address some of them, I think that would be the best way to do it.
Sure.
One question that came up multiple times is the complete tool set that is part of the threat check piece. Can you clarify more on what we recommend a customer, what we recommend a partner to apply, but what are other components that are in that threat check SKU that a partner can leverage on top of what our guidance is?
Sure. So as I said earlier, the threat check license is basically equivalent to Microsoft 365 E5 security license. Hence, it has all the services or enables all the services that are under that SKU. You would be able to leverage the other services as well, then, other than the ones that we recommend. We did not provide a guidance beyond the 3 services that I mentioned: Azure Active Directory Identity Protection, Office 365 ATP, and Microsoft Cloud Application Security, simply because we want to kind of like limit engagement or keep the balance in the engagement between the amount of effort to set up everything and the value that would be provided by having extra tools that would be enabled. You are free to definitely leverage some other tools if you want to, like for example Microsoft Defender ATP if you want to. However, be very careful with that. In the engagement that's scoped as recommended for 3 days. Sorry, you might have it hard time squeezing more tools, but again, you are free to extend beyond that if you want to embed your embed security workshop in your broader engagement or build on top of it. Feel free to use the threat check license with its full scope, and the full scope is again defined as if that was the Microsoft 365 E5 security trial license.
Thank you. Another question that comes up here quite frequently is why do we recommend to have at least 25% of Exchange Online usage to apply the threat check license?
Yeah, that's quite often being asked. So simply, we know, I guess I should say, that the email plane is the most used surface for attacking or attempting to attack the customers' cloud environments. Hence, we feel that if the customer has a certain level of Exchange Online active usage, right, the amount of threats towards that population, right, will be sufficient to get some decent threats in the engagement. Simply speaking, if you would just have a handful of users, testing users in Exchange Online, and the remaining users would be on-prem environment, we would not be able to see threats towards those on-prem users in this engagement. Hence, we kind of like to recommend that there should be at least 25% of the Exchange Online users in scope for that engagement. Active users, obviously.
Let me just browse through the rest of the questions here. There are a couple of new questions popping up in the chat. Why don't we address one of them? There is one question on what is expected in the security workshop without the threat check scenario. And I can probably address that best. So the security workshop without the threat check scenario, again, is also an optional piece where we ask you to apply the 4 out of the 5 modules without the threat check thing. This can be done. Again, you will qualify for less funding. And typically what we see today is that over 90% of the nominations that we receive are with a threat check scenario. But if you want to go ahead and just have the visionary discussion, you can do that too. What is expected is to have the preparation discussion with your customer as well, walk through all of the elements, and then provide us with the proof of execution at the back as well to qualify for funding.
And can I add one thing here? For scenarios on-prem to cloud, it's totally fine deliver that without the threat check. as Katja mentioned, to deliver the Microsoft view, and more than that, to learn from your customers and do the discovery session, that from there you can accelerate other opportunities. And once they migrate to the cloud, then you can, of course, accelerate the E5 upsell in that sense.
Perfect. And then there also have been various questions around whether you can use the material and offering as well for either government customers or SMB customers. Generally, we recommend you can use the toolkit and all of the components for any customer, but it needs to be a paid SKU that the customer qualifies with to apply for funding. So meaning, for example, in the case of EDU, you can definitely use both the content as well as our funding for that, but the customer needs to have a qualified version to get started.
And on government SKU, we still have some product restrictions. So it's not exactly the same level of service. We are improving a lot our offer to Gov, but it's still not exactly the same for the other industries.
Okay. And then there's a good question here from Nelson, whether there is any location hands-on training for these workshops as well. And the answer there is no specific workshop training in and in itself, but what we're actually rolling out in the next couple of months is comprehensive training about all of the different security products that we have for you to be able to drive that conversation in a broader sense. My recommendation is please reach out to your local account team. They will be able to provide you the readiness activities that we're offering. There is physical trainings happening in each one of the geos, and so please reach out to them and ask for guidance on where exactly that is. Let's see, other questions. It's a good question from Marish, I guess. Is there any guidance in simulating these threats?
Oh, in simulating threats. Well, we don't have guidance in a kit itself, and before I answer really that one, we would never recommend you guys, obviously, to do like a red team kind of thing and simulating threats against the customer production environment, right? Especially during the threat check period, that would be cheating, simply speaking. But then, with that said, we have certain guidance around certain tools, how to do the certain simulated threats. There is an attack simulator that can create artificial phishing campaigns inside of the Office 365 environment, things like that. We will be working on having a document that will combine these these pieces together basically, and I think we'll just add it to the toolkit or post it separately, but it's not there yet currently in the toolkit. Again, do not do that during the engagement.
And then there is one more question from Yevgeny about CPE metrics for the partners, which I assume is probably us asking the customer to rate the partner and the value and the benefits that these workshops brought. The answer there is yes. Because this is our key hero go-to-market offer, and because we are investing quite heavily in this go-to-market offer, we definitely will ask the customer about the value, but also the satisfaction with you as a partner. And the opportunity that you have with that is this is not only a go-to-market hero offer for the partner channel, but this is actually also a key fundamental element that we're providing to all of our enterprise sellers to leverage you as a partner to execute these workshops. And what is happening then when you get good recommendations and good satisfaction evaluations from your customers, you will then be also higher prominently leveraged to work together with our enterprise sellers to execute on more workshops as well. And there's a good question from Alejandro about the more level 300 training on all the tools. It's a good question for Natalia.
Yes, so we'll be providing deep dive webinars and brown bags on each one of the tools. I think we have two more important tools that you should care about, or learn more about. One is the discovery session tool, and then of course the threat check. So for the Discovery Session 2, we are recording a video that will be launched with a very deep delivery guide that will be launched with the tool, September 12th. And we'll keep having these webinars to go deeper. So we want to make it like an always-on readiness. So if you have any question, let us know, but we'll keep having these webinars and videos and deep dive trainings. And also reach out to your Microsoft contacts to, if you need any local support and local training, they can help you.
Thank you. And then there's a couple of questions about whether you as a partner are eligible to perform the security workshop. Again, here the reminder, all the content that is downloadable under this AKA Link Security Workshop Kit is available to every partner out there. But when it comes into qualification for the funding, there are two partner categories that are statuses that are required to get approved for funding. One is you either need to be a fast track ready partner or you need to be a co-sell ready partner. If you're unclear on whether you qualify for that or not, let me put the email address from our operations center into the chat. You can reach out to them and just double check whether you qualify, and we're happy to help there.
There's a question on building a business case to move on-prem to Office 365. So there is the value calculator tool that is really dedicated to help in this case. You could leverage that's available in the new platform as well.
And there are a couple of questions around, are there any additional qualifications required to deliver these workshops? In and in itself, beyond the fact that you need to be a fast track ready partner or co-sell ready partner, there is no additional certification needed. And I believe that's also the same thing for CIE.
Yeah.
The CIE is, and the link to the CIE is part of the Security Workshop Kit. Everybody can have a look into that and leverage that for the workshops that you're executing. Let's read through two more questions, and I think it's then time to wrap up the call. There's a question around the POC conducting for a customer. So again, here the reminder is the security workshop is really happening at an earlier sales stage. This is to drive the customer intent to proceed with the Microsoft security solutions. This is not a POC, so this is really an early sales conversation that we believe is much more powerful when you apply the threat check part to that discussion. A POC typically comes later in the sales stage, and so this is a separate piece that you can optionally still use when the opportunity progresses further, but in many cases this might not even be required anymore. And I believe we are about to hit the full hour. There are a couple of more questions in the chat window. We're gonna stay a little bit, we're gonna stay on a little longer to address them directly. I want to thank you for your active participation in this 1 hour session that we had. Thanks for all of the questions, and hoping to partner with many of you, seeing how you request both these workshops, but also how you make these workshops very successful moving forward. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Katja. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a brief moment here and bring your attention to a link that I'm posting in the Q&A panel. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, or you'd like to submit topics for future web conferences, this is your chance to let us know. Survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And that is going to conclude today's web conference. The recording and a copy of the presentation deck from today's session will be available within 5 business days. Please look for an email in the coming days with details on how to access those. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter team, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.